Okay, so from now on, the webinar is recording. So in case you, for matter of privacy, you don't want your name to be visible, just to put yourself in some other name. Then still for the webinars netiquette, I would like to share a couple of points about the solution-oriented conversation. So let's think about possibilities. We know that struggles are visible and tangible for all of us, and we quite know what the struggles are, especially we international and immigrant community. So let's now think about possibilities and solution, and let's try to strive for a positive and constructive conversation. After these presentations and after our discussion, would be nice to think what's next, you know, some plan of action to use all together. Also, we have some ethical guidelines that have been shared by the Stop Hatred Now campaign. And as you all know, International Working Women of Finland is a community and an organization that strive for equality and for integration and inclusion. And we have also as purpose to give the possibility to as much people as possible to share their ideas and their points of views and their knowledge about diversity and inclusion. And this means that it can be quite possible that we don't agree altogether and what the things are being discussed. We might be of different ideas, and that's totally okay. Just please keep in mind to stay respectful, safe, and inclusive. Some of the topics we are going to discuss today might be quite sensitive and might be trigger warning. So please let the people talk in their own terms. Don't force conversations and don't force to share particulars of own life that might not want to be shared. And of course, to all of you, if you feel that some question might be controversial, you feel that you don't want to answer, it's totally fine. We are in a safe space here, so you can openly say that you don't want. And please keep in mind that here we treat everybody equally and respectfully, and discrimination is not allowed. We are very strict about it. You will be kicked out if we see some kind of discriminatory or repressive or offensive terminology, even for making examples. If you really feel that some word has to be shared, maybe try to censor it in some way. But yeah, let's share together first thing first, what does discrimination mean? Discrimination occurs when a person is treated unfavorably, or your character is defamed, or you are put in an inferior position if connected to one of these following grounds. That can be gender, can be ethnic background, can be religion, can be age, can be origin, and so on, language, and so on. And it can be direct or indirect. So direct discrimination is quite tangible, it's quite visible, but we all know that indirect discrimination is quite well possible to occur, and it's actually harder to prove. And let's get first thing first to give a general view about the international population of Finland. And according to statistics of Finland, so Tilastokeskus, at the end of 2019, 423,000 people with a foreign background were living in Finland. That means that it's about the 8%, 7.5% of the population. And about of this amount of people, half of them are living in Helsinki metropolitan area, and 1 in 4, so 26%, estimate they are overtrained for the current job that they are doing, and around 20,000 of them are currently searching for a job. Now it's a kind of funny, not funny, that we planned this webinar exactly a couple of days before the Black Lives Matter movement started spreading during, like not spreading, but like getting more visibility during these last days. And it's like it fell in the right hands that we were planning this webinar, so we can, you know, also through these 2 hours, we can spread more knowledge and more data over what's the fact also in Finland, not only overseas. And according to the European Union Agency for Fundamental Rights, the racism against the Black people in the EU, surprise, surprise, Finland is on the first place, noting that 63% of people with African descent have faced some kind of discrimination because of their origins and because of the color of their skin. And yes, and if we want to still talking about the job market, the most 3 common jobs for immigrants in 2017 have been real estate cleaner, restaurant jobs, and labor hire. That can be in different ways, like for example, construction yard or different kind of agencies. And these, of course, these jobs are completely dignified. They're always honor of having a job. But of course, if a person has a higher degree, might strive for a position that it's more compatible with their own studies. But considering that these 3 are the 3 first are the most common jobs for immigrants, it means that we are not quite there yet in Finland. And this means also that there must be some kind of reasons why the immigrants work mostly in the private service sectors and in low-paid jobs. There are also plenty of highly trained experts, but often it's difficult for them to find employment in jobs that match their education. This can be sometimes caused by the fact that degrees completed abroad are often not recognized in Finland or unofficially recognized as with less value. And also that the fact that the higher education coming from abroad is not necessarily seen as the same value. Like for example, 43% of immigrant women in Helsinki have some kind of higher education, like university education or ammattikorkeakoulu, but still of this 43%, almost only 1/4 of them are employed in the area that they are more striving for. And also recent discussion in the Nordic countries has been about facilitating immigration, how to retain these international talents. But as a matter of fact, the immigration policies are also been trying to tightening, because trying to justify human reasons and also from the perspective of sustainability of Finnish economy. We also have a problem with the hidden job market, that the Finnish labor market has a good reputation of attracting workers, but the fact is that it's not always easy to get a job in the field because of the lack of transparency in the hidden job market, and the job positions often in Finland are not advertised in the traditional ways. So this requires strong networks to find these jobs, something that immigrants not necessarily have. Then we have employment agencies. So basically companies hire some agency for finding the right employee. This means the maximum result with the least time and the least money expense, of course. So of course the people don't want to take risks with hiring people, right? And then we have the stereotypes that we know already, that the one person is representative not only of herself, but of our own community. So Finland immigration, even though we say that the actually proper racist study in Finland started only around 30 years ago, the problem is longer before that. And Finland, even though there is this common name that Finland is new to new culture and immigration waves, this is quite not true, since that we know that Finland has seen Romani community and Sami community for much long time, that only 30 years. And we know how the kind of treatment, for example, that the minorities like Sami people have reached or been treated with. But we will have a person that we will talk about it later. I'm now leaving the word to our first speaker here. We have some of the solutions that we can think about together during the discussion later. But we have our first speakers now. We have Sanna Nykänen and Barbara Bergbom from the Sanna is working as project coordinator in the Moninaisesti Parempi project in THL, so the Finnish Institute for Health and Welfare. And the project aims to promote diversity in working life and advance career paths of highly educated women with immigrant background. While instead, Barbara comes from the Finnish Institute of Occupational Health and will tell a bit about the work done in Työterveyslaitos and some points for research and development work that she has been doing. So let's welcome our first speakers. I will now stop sharing and Barbara will start sharing her screen.
Thank you so much, Chiara. Thank you for the introduction. So hi everyone, I'm Sanna Nykänen, and as Chiara said, yes, I'm working as a project coordinator in a Manifold More project, and I am here with my co-partner, senior specialist Barbara Bergbom. Barbara, would you like to say hi?
Hi, Barbara here. So, and you can see the presentation is now, you can see the presentation.
Yes, I can see it perfectly. Yeah. Hopefully everyone else can as well. Perfect. So as Chiara just said, our project aims to promote diversity in working life and advance the career paths of highly educated women with immigrant background. And the project is led by organization where I come from, Finnish Institute for Health and Welfare, and it is partnered with the Finnish Institute of Occupational Health with Barbara Bergbom and more. And the project we have, can I have just the one slide? Yes, perfect. The project consists of three components which aim to create gender sensitive and diversity promoting human resource practices in expert organizations. And secondly, to strengthen the expertise and employment of immigrant background women and the understanding of diversity in society. And thirdly, we try to challenge the stereotypes associated with the immigrant background women through research and expert communications. Thank you, Barbara. You can put the next slide and introduce a bit about Theo.
Yes, so we are now working with the diversity barometer at the Finnish Institute of Occupational Health, which we have conducted as a part of the Manifold project. We have done the diversity barometer previously 3 times, and we had some questions that we always ask to get sort of a picture how things and attitudes are changing over time. But this time we had lots of new questions, and we are focusing on recruitment and thoughts of how it should, the recruitment process should be developed to foster more diversity. And the diversity barometer was sent this year to Finnish HR or human resources personnel, and we are at the moment analyzing the data and writing the report. The report will be published in fall, in the end of August or beginning of September, and the report will be free and possible to upload, and we will advertise or inform about the report when it's available. And then we are also, or would you like to, Sanna, tell more about the next point about produce research data?
Well, yes, during the next years, we have a 3-year project. We are going to produce some research data on participation and development opportunities of women with immigrant background.
Yes.
Yeah, but more of it. It's just coming, so we can talk about it more later.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And yes, and in the fall we are beginning a small-scale research project. We are going to interview immigrants with women with immigrant background in expertise organization, and as well supervisors and HR personnel about what kind of practices they have developed, or what are the obstacles for fully using the potential and knowledge of people with or women with immigrant background. And we are after the analyzing, we are going to try to produce this kind of map of different steps you can take as an employee or a job seeker, as well as what the organization can do to foster more inclusion and the use of the potential in the organization, including as well on focusing on people with immigrant background and women. And then later on in next year, or at the end of next year, we are producing this kind of role model stories, which will be produced as video clips with authentic women with immigrant background who are working in different kinds of expertise tasks, and as well in that kind of jobs that are traditionally considered as more jobs of males. So the point with this or goal with these stories is that people could have these kind of role models of those who have sort of broken gender stereotypes and have sort of found jobs or created jobs that match their expertise and will to develop in their jobs. And so the next slide, I have a little bit different difficulties at times to change the slide. Yes.
No worries. Thank you so much, Barbara. Thank you so much. So nextly, what we acknowledge that, yes, the problem has been recognized. There is discrimination in job search situations. And secondly, there are differences in the prevalence of discrimination between population groups and genders. And thirdly, discrimination is structural.
Or
so,
yes,
yeah,
or we
could
begin.
add. I will open.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that discrimination is often structural, but it happens also without being structural.
Yes, that is really correct. Thank you, Barbara. So here I would like to present you that discrimination happens at many levels in work life, and the barriers is recognized. Here in the first picture, a researcher Ahmad at Helsinki University did a large-scale experiment where he sent out some 5,000 fake job applications under Finnish and foreign names. And the idea was to find out if candidates' names affected whether they were invited to an interview or not. And the ones who received the most invitations to interviews were applicants with white Finnish names. And here in the second news, it is about a podcast where discrimination in job markets were from the immigrants, why submitted. And immigrants came forward with barriers, for example, with accounts of pay and contract discrimination, as well as inadequate access to Finnish language courses. Would you like to, Barbara, add something here? Perfect.
No, I think it was, you explained well.
Perfect, thank you. Here, I would like to show you what do we know. we know at least that about 40% of those born abroad say that they have experienced discrimination in their daily lives in the past year in Finland. And there are significant differences in prevalences of discrimination, like I said earlier. And here I want to show you a diagram of experiences of preventing or making it more difficult for employers to participate in working life. Unfortunately, it is in Finnish, but especially here in immigrants from African continent face discrimination the most. Can I have the next slide, please? Perfect. Also, the majority of the non-employed estimate that they are fully able to work and would like to work full-time. And definitely overqualification is considerably more common among those who have moved to Finland compared to the entire Finnish population. This refers to persons with higher education and so on. Can I have the next slide, please? Perfect. And what about the consequences of discrimination? Experiences of discrimination undermine definitely the trust in society and sense of security. And secondly, the experiences of inequality has serious consequences for health and well-being. We know that experiences of direct or indirect discrimination are associated with poor physical and mental health. And also overqualification for job is linked to poor well-being as well. And thirdly, here, discrimination has consequences not only at the individual level, but also on the society as a whole. And it is really complex.
Yes, and I would like to add that, yes, on the society as a whole, in many different ways. If you, for example, think about organization, we of course lose the best potential if we discriminate and do not get the innovative advantage that we could have. So it's sort of also connected to the economical well-being of a society. So in many, the economical well-being is just one dimension, but I would like...
Very good point, Barbara. Yeah. For instance, climate change cannot be resolved if only ideas from the same starting points and backgrounds are involved.
Exactly, yes. And the next slide.
Yes, thank you. It is important to keep in mind that discrimination is not limited only to recruitment situations, and discrimination occurs throughout working life, for example, in situations where employees are promoted or in getting permanent job positions. And discrimination in applying for jobs are not limited to people who have moved to Finland. It occurs on minorities and it occurs also intersectionally, and I think we're going to hear more about that for the next speakers. And thirdly, discrimination, like we said with Barbara, is structural, and it is not limited only to situations between individuals. And structural racism means that individual situations are repeated in a systematic way, for example, in language requirements that unjustifiably exclude individuals. Here, I would like to present some good ways and practices. Equality Act is one good way and practice to require the authorities and the employers to take systematic measures to promote equality. And it is quite an important tool in equality planning. And secondly, I would like to say that anonymous job search is one way, but it is alone not enough. And commitment to promote diversity at the strategic level and institutions and organizations are much needed. Good example is to do recruitment by applicants' qualifications anonymously if possible. Then each should have an equal good chance. And thirdly, we need wide range solutions and understanding. We need recognition of discrimination, and we need more information and resources to ensure that the cases are actually reported. And we need new kind of norm about who is the best applicant and what is the most qualified expert. And we need role models to pave the way. And thirdly, declaring that racism is not okay / zero tolerance is a step, but it is not enough. We definitely need more proactive work for anti-racism. Here on the last slide, if any one of you have ever faced discrimination, you can find information through these links from Non-Discrimination Ombudsman, the Center for Occupational Safety, and from website of the Occupational Safety and Health Administration in Finland, and also many labor unions in Finland. Perfect. And you can find us from Twitter, and we have an English website and also website at the Finnish Institute of Occupational Health. There you can find more information about of our ongoing project and our informations.
Thank you so much, Sanna.
Thank you so much.
Barbara. Very interesting presentation. And I will now happily introduce our next speaker. That is Susanna Viljanmaa. She is a board member of a Transfeminiinit organization, and she's a media entrepreneur, and she has organized the big digital culture events, done publishing, and worked as a public speaker and a playing instructor, and advanced the hacker activist. And before that, she worked as a software specialist in the ICT business. Her current position is to enhance the art of theremin playing in Finland, and she is an activist for the Transfeminiinit organization, and she's also writing for the Scrolly magazine. Welcome, Susanna, to share your presentation.
Okay, thank you for the introduction. So you already said the things that I would have said to introduce myself, so I won't repeat them.
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem with that. But besides having been presenting as a woman in my field, I have lived most of my life perceived as a man, despite not being very good to act as one. And I had prayed to wake up in a girl's body when I was 12 years old in the early 90s, not even knowing any terminology about it. So I dated a trans woman later in the 90s, and having seen the amount of oppression that they face every day, it made me so scared that it took me 20 years to start my transition into a woman. I was so afraid that I lose my family and friends and the jobs I had, so that I would have been laughed at as a performer. So I was lucky having found a career and a loving family. And the crowd didn't seem to mind at all. They were giving me a standing ovation after performing my first concert, first time as a woman in an evening gown. But I'm still quite privileged compared to the rest of the transgender population. So I'm gonna start my screen sharing. Let's see how it works. I hope you can see it right now. So our organization Transfeminiinit, or Transfeminiinit ry, it works primarily as informing about transgender issues and publishing stories. And it consults transgender people about their rights. And it takes part in direct political action by giving reports to ministries and health officials. So, a few studies about the job discrimination of transgender people in Finland have been done in the recent years. Several researchers have reported reaching the transgender population difficult unless they belong to said minorities themselves. One study done as a part of the Equal project in 2003 reported 8% of the transgender population had reported being abused at work because of their gender identity. 6% reported experiencing being insulted, but in addition to that, almost half told having heard bad jokes making fun of gender and sexual minorities. 27% had heard slurs targeted towards the LGBT minorities. Most had experienced discrimination through the attitudes of co-workers and superiors. Another study in 2006 reported sexual and gender minorities mostly suffering from the heteronormative atmosphere at the workplace, the pressure of their own gender identity or sexual orientation, invisibility and discrimination, bullying, being called with names, and the fear of them. All of this causes pressure towards uniformity and not feeling like being a member of the community. FRA study in 2012 reported that even 74% of the transgender people in Finland had experienced discrimination. Anu-Katarina Salonen from the Greenwear Club organization made a survey in 2016 about discrimination in the work life in Finland, noticing that discrimination still occurs and intervening is still difficult or inefficient. 29% of the respondents had faced discrimination during applying for work, and 38% had faced discrimination from co-workers. Mistreating was more prevalent in smaller towns. On the other hand, many have also had very positive outcomes experiencing no discrimination at all. It's still unclear whether there had been a change for better or the survey's style of questions and respondents' young age guided the response for the better. What makes the transgender population as a special case in job discrimination is that besides preventing from getting a job, being transgender might not be noticed until a later time after being employed. Many of us don't have the courage or resources to transition early in the life, making several people getting a career before starting to transition. This results a major part of discrimination to comprise getting bullied or illegally sacked. Most, including me, have feared that they would lose their career, families, and everything by transitioning, delaying it significantly. Some of us want to live as two separate genders, depending on time and occasion, many wanting to be in the closet at work. Some of them have been sacked after the people at work have found it out. There have been cases involving transgender workers experiencing even direct violence or being threatened with it. In the lesser forms of discrimination, people have experienced bullying or exclusion from the community after transitioning. Also, recruiting as a transgender person might out you unless you have all your school and employment certificates renewed and your judicial gender reassigned. In general, people have more difficulties in accepting being transgender or non-binary than homosexuality. In theory, Finland has ensured the well-being of LGBT people pretty well by legislation, but in practice, we encounter oppression in alarmingly big numbers. The case of Lapin Kansa sacking their new editor-in-chief pointed out how one sexuality could terminate your career, and Maria Sisko-Aalto was pressured to resign from the vicar's position after reassigning her gender. Many sad stories have happened outside the publicity. I have a disappointing number of anecdotal cases of such activities, even in my friends. The most depressing story is one who had worked 20 years in the same job, being bullied all the time, and after going for a sick leave for another reason, she had been intrigued so bad that she couldn't return to work again, and she was eventually sacked during the sick leave. The union said that there wouldn't be a chance for a case, since they only have anecdotal evidence. In 2015, a new equality law was passed to prevent the oppression of the gender minorities in their jobs or hobbies, guaranteeing them a safe environment to express their gender and use the facilities they need. This includes not only the transgender people, but the intersex people too. However, many people are not aware of what the law offers them, or they are just too afraid to seek justice. There are several employers that don't cater their employees well enough before getting threatened with court action. The most vulnerable people are the workers under temporary contracts who are afraid that they might not get their contract renewed after complaining. In most cases, sacking has been even disguised under another reason, like productive and economic reasons, but still picking targets by discriminating means. So a worker experiencing gender-based discrimination should contact the OSHA or the Occupational Safety and Health Authority, since they have a duty to evaluate whether the discrimination is illegal, making the employer responsible for it. It's still clear that a significant amount of discrimination issues never get reported, which was found out on a survey. What is most terrifying is that several transgender workers have had their contracts not renewed, have been sacked or forced to resign after coming out of the closet and telling they have a new name. This seems to overemphasize on blue-collar environments and religious environments. Also, I know plenty of people who have transitioned later in life and they have stopped getting new jobs after that, no matter which jobs they seek. Especially people who don't fit to the binary gender stereotypes or who don't pass well are even more under threat. Because many transgender people have been uprooted and made a career at the gender they didn't identify with, sometimes it causes them to be the first representatives of the gender they identify with in their company or field. For example, some companies in hardware industry may not have had any facilities for women at all, making them threatened in the cloakrooms. It can work the other way around, for example, in the health and daycare industry. Intersectionality is another problem. It's also typical for the transgender minorities to belong to other oppressed subgroups, like the sexual minorities, ethnic minorities, impaired groups, and especially trans women are overrepresented in the autistic spectrum, rendering them not necessarily well equipped to fight against the oppression. Some of transitioning people report that they have either lost or gained male privilege, depending on which direction they get where they transition into. I've heard multiple trans women telling that they no longer trust, not listened to, and being talked over. And in comparison, trans men have reported being taken more seriously. This behavior might be more obvious in countries that are less gender neutral than the Nordic countries. However, treatment isn't always that much of a binary. For example, as an autist and not being strictly heteronormative, I failed to gain the male privilege, and I never felt that I would have lost that privilege after transitioning. The Equality Law, Chapter 3, the 8th paragraph, requires employers to not discriminate anyone by age, ethnicity, nationality, language, religion, conviction, opinion, political activism, trade union activity, family relations, health, disability, sexual orientation, or other personal reason. Employers are obligated to not only encourage equality, and companies with at least 30 employees have to draw up an equality plan, but also to monitor that it is obeyed. The equality plan also provides security for the employer, as well by clearly assuring the crew about the openness and impartiality at the workplace. Encouraging a permissive attitude towards diversity in general and good work atmosphere have been felt to advance the acceptance of gender diversity, thus boosting everyone's comfort at working. Some people have also told their work environment being so good that it has encouraged them to be openly transgender, and it has empowered them. Many have felt that new friendships between the colleagues of their identified gender have become closer to them after transitioning, and also being role models in their new gender representation. At best, a work community can work as an empowering intellectual resource. In the 2016 report, 31% reported gaining the support of their work communities, and 42% consider their being transgender as a restorative factor in their work community. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Susanna, for your presentation and for your powerful experience. Thank you very much for sharing it with us. And I am going to now introduce you our third and last speaker, that is Maren-Elle Länsman, that I pronounced in the French way, Maren-Elle. Maren is a city Sami, so a Sami or ethnic person that lives in the cities, who is studying Sami culture in the University of Oulu, and she has been teaching Sami language for beginners and given Sami themed workshops, and she's an active member in different Sami organizations, and she's writing a master thesis about the representation of Sami women in Finnish media, and is also part of Suoma Sami Nuoret, that is the Sami youth of Finland. So welcome, Maren-Elle.
Thank you, Chiara, for the introduction. I will now start sharing my screen, just a second. And putting the slideshow on. Just a second again. Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Maren-Elle Länsman, and I'm really honored to be here. And thank you for the previous speakers, especially Susanna, for sharing your story. That really hit me home, as I belong to two different minorities, being both Sami and queer. But today I am here to bring Sami youth perspective to the topic discussed today. I'm going to speak about the role of the Sami languages in the Sami job market. From my personal experience, the Sami youth who don't speak Sami and live outside the Sami home area may face difficulties in entering the Sami job market. Knowing one or more of the Sami languages is valued in the Sami job market, but only a minority of the Sami speaks any Sami language, and only a minority is getting Sami language teaching. The thing is here that in my experience, the Sami don't usually face discrimination because of our appearance or our names, but we face structural injustice, for example, in the Finnish school system. That's why in this presentation, I'm going to focus on Sami language as a resource in job market and how the city Sami youth have limited access to this resource. So, well, shortly about me, Chiara said quite a lot already. Thank you for that. Here you can see a picture of me wearing the traditional Sami dress. So I was born in Inari, in the heart of the Sami home area. But when I was 4 years old, my family and I moved in Oulu region, where I have lived since. And that is the reason why I'm referring myself as a city Sami. That's how we Samis describe Samis living in a city, not in the Sami home area. So I study Sami culture here in the University of Oulu, and as Chiara already told, I'm currently writing my master's thesis. And on my thesis, I'm researching the representations of Sami women in Finnish media. And I'm currently in the middle of applying process to teacher education to officially become a Sami teacher. And I also have background in Sami organization work, such as being a board member in Oulu Sami Servi, which is an organization for Samis living in Oulu. Besides studying, I have been teaching No Sami beginners course for adults, and I have also held workshops on Sami culture in secondary schools in Oulu area. So now about Sami people in general. The Sami are indigenous people living in 4 different countries: Finland, Sweden, Norway, and Russia. The Samis form one nation, which has 9 to 10 different languages. The map here shows the traditional living areas and the languages spoken in each Sami region. However, it's good to notice that the map illustrates quite static picture of the Sami, since nowadays most of the Sami population is living on southern cities of these countries. The estimated number of Samis varies between 75,000 and 100,000. Traditional Sami livelihoods are fishing, gathering, handicrafts, hunting, and reindeer herding, and also the modern ways of practicing them. Out of the traditional Sami livelihoods, reindeer herding still functions as one of the important cornerstones of the Sami culture by offering both language arena as well as material for clothing, other Sami handicrafts, and food culture. In Finland, only around 10% of the Sami still work as reindeer herders, as most of the Sami hold modern jobs. From the 19th century, the Nordic states have engaged in conscious assimilation policy towards the Sami. For this reason, many of the Sami have lost their language and culture. However, the revitalization processes of Sami languages have been going on since the 1970s. My presentation will focus on the issues concerning the Sami living in Finland. Under the Constitution, the Sami, as an indigenous people, have the right to maintain and develop their own language and culture. There are around 10,000 Sami in Finland, speaking 3 different languages, but only a minority speaks any of them. All Sami languages are endangered, as you can tell by the amount of speakers in each language. The No-Sami is the biggest of the Sami languages, and it's also spoken in Norway and Sweden. Inari-Sami is only spoken in Finland, and most of the Skald Sami speakers in the world live in Finland, and some of them live in the Russian side of SÁMI. The Sami home area, which is painted on yellow and blue on the map here, is legally defined. It covers 3 northern municipalities and part of Sodankylä municipality. In the home area, the Sami have linguistic and cultural self-government. It is managed by the Sami parliament, which is elected by the Sami. Nowadays, 60% of the Sami live outside the home area. Nevertheless, there are more extensive linguistic rights in the home area than outside of it. In this presentation, I will use the word Sami job market to describe jobs where the Sami language is one of the qualification requirements or is considered an advantage in job search. Employers in the job market can be Sami institutions like Sami Parliament, radio and TV, museums, archives, and art producers. Also, municipalities and public services organized by the Finnish state offer jobs, for example, teachers, healthcare experts, and people working in social services. However, there is urgent need for experts in different fields who have adequate language skills and understanding of the Sami culture. In the Sami Language Act, it is stated that a Sami has the right to use the Sami language before any public authorities in Sami home area. In theory, this means that the authorities should have the Sami language skills, but in practice, majority of them don't. For that reason, there is a need for interpreters and translators. There is also a great need, for example, mental health services and elder care, where people can use their own mother tongue. It can be difficult to express yourself in Finnish when you are talking about very personal issues, especially when Finnish is not your first language. And especially elder people can lose their ability to speak Finnish due to memory loss, for example. That's why knowing Sami is really important in these fields. So now I have described the Sami job market and the role of Sami language in it. But how does the school system in Finland meet the need of the Sami-speaking experts? The Basic Education Act ensures that Sami pupils living in the Sami home area have the right to study in their mother tongue. Municipalities are required to organize teaching in Sami, and the teaching is open for everyone, regardless of their ethnicity. Sami teaching is offered both for pupils who have Sami as a first language and pupils who want to study Sami as a foreign language. However, teaching lacks proper resources, as there are not enough Sami teachers and learning materials for 3 different Sami languages. But what is the situation outside the Sami home area, here where I live, and other cities? According to the Basic Education Act, the language of instruction may be one of the Sami languages. But what this means in practice? Offering Sami language classes is not mandatory, so the schools won't actively organize teaching even though the fact is that 70% of the Sami primary school pupils live outside the home area. Growing up in Oulu, I was lucky to get Sami teaching for 2 hours a week because another Sami family happened to live in the area, there happened to be a Sami teacher, and there was a Sami organization to demand teaching for us. The school offered a classroom and salary for the teacher, but the Sami themselves were expected to find a teacher. I was also happy enough that my mom and my relatives spoke Sami to me since I was born. So that's how I got Sami as my first language. Because of the history of assimilation, many of Sami families have lost their language. In that case, 2 hours a week is not enough to fully learn the language, but it creates foundation for further studies. For me, it also helped to keep in touch with my Sami heritage in city environment. The challenge outside the home area is that there is also a lack of teachers and learning material. In addition to that, Sami parents must be active in demanding teaching for their children because the municipalities are not required to organize teaching for Sami pupils. For this reason, there is going on a distance learning pilot project aiming to offer Sami language teaching to Samis living outside the home area that is trying to tackle the issues mentioned earlier. So, lastly, this discussion brings us to the mismatch between the Sami job market and the educational system. The fact is, we don't have enough qualified Sami-speaking employees in almost any field. In this presentation, I have been talking from the perspective of the city Sami youth. We have challenges reaching the Sami-speaking job market because the primary school does not support Sami language teaching outside the Sami home area. The question is not only about knowing the language, but also about one's identity. The Finnish school system fails to offer knowledge on Sami culture and history in general, as these topics are not covered in curriculum. In my case, to learn Sami history and culture, I have been studying in university, and I think that's not right. That's why language classes may have important role for building and maintaining one's Sami identity. As we all know, knowing your roots and culture have a significant role in becoming yourself. Knowing yourself and your heritage, it's easier to find your place in the world. My point is that usually Sami language is seen as a part of Sami identity, but in this presentation, I want to bring up the idea that Sami language can also be a valuable resource in job search. I want the Sami youth to have access to this resource by learning it through their basic education. If we want to ensure that also the city Sami youth are able to take part in Sami job markets, the Sami teaching must be developed more, not only as a language subject, but also as a language of instruction in teaching. The living Sami job market also supports the preservation and development of the Sami languages and cultures, and we really want the Sami youth to be part of it. Thank you everyone. Kiitos.